Hello, and welcome to Magic is Real, a podcast focused on the fascinating world of near-death experiences, spirit communication, and all things metaphysical and spiritual. The mission of this project is to share messages of hope and inspiration with others, and to spread the word that death is only an illusion. Thank you for being here with an open heart and mind. I wish you peace, light, and love always. Hello, Magic Israel listeners. Thank you so much for being here today. I am so happy today to bring you my guest, Kathy Mcdaniel. She is the author of a book called Misfit in Hell, The Heaven Expat. To Heaven Expat, To Heaven Expat. And it is fall. Normally, when I'm in this booth, I'm sweating, and now I'm chilly with my little sweater, and I'm so excited about it. Kathy, thank you for being here. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Shannon. We got a little bit of rain this morning, so that was fun.
Oh, yes. I love
Yes,
that.
I mean, I'm in the Seattle area, and we're usually wet all the time. It's been really dry summer, so this was a treat.
I know this is the best time. Well, Kathy is a near-death experiencer, and I want to start today by talking to Kathy about who she is as a human being, what her background was. Kathy, I'd love to hear about you because I know that you had a profound near-death experience that you've told this story so many times. But I'd love to know what your life was like before you had this. What were your spiritual beliefs? I'd love to hear about your spiritual journey.
Journey. It, I'd have to go back to my dad because in World War II, he was a pilot in the Philippines, and he was a young man. He was only in his early 20s. He was an avowed atheist. He had gone to St. Louis University and just, argued with the priest there all the time. So here he is. He gets shot down. The plane does a triple somersault, lands upside down, catches fire. He is stuck in the plane. His head's in the sand, and he's dying. So he just says in his mind, God, if you can get me out of this mess, I'll become a Catholic, and so will my whole family. Well, immediately these three Marines ran out from the jungle and pulled the plane up, drug him out, and he survived. So, needless to say, when he got back home, we became Catholics. So my mom had been a Baptist, but that didn't matter. We were all going to be Catholics. And so me and my brother and sister were raised with Catholic schools all the way through, the nuns, and going to church every Sunday. My parents, my dad was a lector. He at church, he gave the gospel readings. My mom belonged to all kinds of do good kind of place, ladies things, and they were very active with our little Catholic school. And so that was my whole life in a nutshell. When it came to religion, I had no other experience. So when I went to college, I think the first lesson I heard, one of the nuns said that there was really no Adam and Eve. That was a metaphor, for blah, blah, blah. Well, that just blew my mind. And when I went home and told my parents, my mother said they were going to yank me out of that heathen school. And my dad says, now, it's, that, yeah, it could be, put a crack in it. But it was the first time I ever questioned. And as I got older, I got married in the church when I was very young. And then I got divorced. But I got an annulment. And that took a lot of work. But again, always playing by the rules. I really was a role player. But then when I had my near-death experience, and I actually, went to hell. And then I went to heaven. And I was kicked out by my best friend who had died the month before. I had been taking care of him. He had leukemia, because he told me I had too much left to do. And I had also remembered when I was there, I had seen this big book that was open on a big table, and he'd been showing me something in there. And all I remembered was saying, oh no, that's going to be too hard. I want to stay here with you. So that's all I got to remember about why I was sent back. I had too much left to do. But then there was this crack in my religious things, because I wanted to know why I went to hell, number one. And number two, why heaven was so blissful and joyful. And there was no Jesus sitting on a throne, and there was no all of this stuff that I was taught was going to be there. So, Shannon, that began a real journey, and that was 23 years ago. And it's been a tough one.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kathy. I know that just in case people are wondering now, and I hope that they'll read your book, I know that you had crossed over, if you will, because of a virus that was similar to COVID. Is that correct?
That's right. I had
Yeah.
lung failure. So they put me on a ventilator and into a drug induced coma. I was there for almost 3 weeks. The last thing the doctor said to me is, we're going to give you something called white amnesia. And Kathy, you will be unable to remember anything that happens to you in this coma. You're just going to go to sleep. And that is not what happened.
And how long were you in that coma?
Almost 3 weeks. And during that time, I was failing. They had really had not expected me to make it. And they had told my family at one point to come say goodbye. She's not going to pull through this. But in a coma, the ions people will tell you that you can drift over. You don't have to be flatlined. If you're in a coma, that's also a way for you to slip into the other side.
That's interesting because if anyone's read Dr. Eben Alexander's book, that's what happened to him. He was a neurosurgeon, is that correct? Yes.
Yeah.
And his whole experience is his book is Proof of Heaven, which I highly recommend. It's so well written and really interesting. And yeah, it's so interesting that you don't necessarily even have to flatline necessarily to have a near death experience, an out of body experience, or to have that connection with the other side. We're leaving out a lot of the specific details in this particular interview. A, because you've told this story so many times that we want to focus on something else. B, it's also in your book, and I really like people to read that. But so I'm going to just ask some specifics so for the context. And so when you crossed over, did you go immediately to hell? And if so, how did you know you were in hell?
No, I just woke up. I was conscious, and it was completely black, and there was no sound, and I didn't know if I was standing or sitting. I was just me, and I felt alive. I felt that somebody put me in a closet as a joke. But it took many years. Finally, I didn't get to the ions group till 10 years after this experience, and learned that that was called the void. And that's a very common waiting room, if you want, just to kind of get people a chance to acclimate to a new place. But I didn't know that. And so I was just waiting around thinking, well, this is strange. And then I started seeing kind of a reddish glow. And I thought, okay, maybe the sun's coming up. And as it got lighter, I could see a swirling fog, and it got warmer, and I could hear people screaming and shrieking. And um, I was kind of starting to get a little nervous. And then all of a sudden, out of this fog came a very creepy voice that says, "Do you know where you are?"
Wow.
And I thought for a couple of seconds, and I thought, I hope I'm wrong. And I said, hell? And then this thing went, wah, and this horrible, creepy voice. And man, I just turned and ran into the darkness. And the whole time I was gone, I never felt dead. It just felt like I was in a strange situation, a strange place. It was very unsettling. But as it progressed, I ran into demons. That's kind of a hallmark. Um, there were terrible creatures that hurt me and mocked me, and it went on and on and on and on. And that's all detailed in the book. It's too long to give here,
Yeah, of course.
but I didn't. People say, well, how long were you there? There's no clocks, folks. Did you see your feet? No mirrors. I just knew I was someplace bad and scary. And they kept telling me to despair, just give up. You're not getting out of here. But I kept fighting them. And that's that misfit in hell thing. And so finally, I did get out. And it was an inadvertent synchronicity, that all of a sudden, boom, I was just blasted into this joy and light and happiness and bliss. It just, everything else just went away. I could remember nothing other than just being filled with this joy. And then my friend was there, the one that I was taking care of. And he told me that I had to go back. I had too much left to do. So when I got back, of course, I weighed 86 pounds and I couldn't move and I had a thing in my throat and all that. And it was a hard landing.
I can imagine. What so many people talk about their near-death experiences as this beautiful light and love, and it's all good. And I'm glad we're talking about this because I think it's important to also address the experiences of people who haven't had that particular that hasn't been their experience. What have you determined about why it was that you did go? I know that you weren't sent there because you did something wrong. What were you sent there to see?
In the last 12 years that I've been in IONS and met hundreds of wonderful people and heard their stories, my understanding now is that we come to earth, we start in heaven, we're souls, and we plan our lives, we want to learn things, and this is kind of like a school. There's no right or wrong. We come down here and we meet the people, our little soulmates, like you and I probably knew each other and said, you know what, we'll just touch base for about an hour while we're down there this time, you know. And I believe I planned all that. The flip, not flip, but the adjunct to that is that my whole life I was taught there was heaven, purgatory, and hell. Only Mother Teresa and those kinds go straight to heaven. The rest of us are going to go to purgatory. And then we're going to get our sins burned off and become pure. And then we can go to heaven. I heard that my whole life. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. So when I died, I wasn't disappointed. I went to purgatory. So I made that.
Mm.
That manifestation came from me. And I can't blame that on anybody. And it wasn't anything I did wrong. It's just I believed it. So the message I am to bring back is to tell people um, God is all loving and all forgiving and doesn't condemn anybody. So don't screw up like I did and put yourself there. It's a very big thing. I mean, I was always afraid to die and go to purgatory or hell. And now that I've been in there and come back, yeah, it's a terrible place, but you don't have to go.
Oh, I love that you said that. I love that you said that because I that's been my belief and it makes me feel some comfort in that because I didn't know what to make of these experiences, the hell ones. Because to me, I my belief is that exactly what you just said, that we're all from the light. When we come here, we might make poor decisions. We might have trauma in our past that makes us angry and we act against our true nature. And we all do. We all do at some point or another. We are not our best selves. We don't always do the right thing. We don't always treat people as kindly as we should, even if it's inadvertently. And I don't believe that certain people get chosen to go to hell and certain people get chosen to go to heaven. I believe that we are all part of this greater source and light, and that no matter what you do, whatever happens here is just an experience helping to help your soul grow. And I also always suspected that I do believe that they're lower vibration spirits only because they might still be, I don't want to say stuck because I also don't, and I'd love to hear I'm saying this so that you can give your perspective. That I don't believe that they're in hell or in heaven. I just think that depending on their spiritual evolution and what they've learned and how much they've decided to grow, they might be at different sort of energetic levels. Like, but I feel like the hell that we see is the hell that we create. And it's the same way here. We can create our own hell. We can create, no, and some of it feels like hell because when horrible things happen to us that we didn't invite or that, we really couldn't have prevented, it feels as though there must be this dark energy and this dark force. And people often refer to that as this entity that's, this the opposite of God. And I don't even like to say the word because I just don't really believe that there's this evil, devil with a pitchfork sitting there going, I'm going to slay you for your sins. And so that really does make so much sense. What you said is that you expected to see that, and that's what you saw. And also, there are people that I do believe that Jesus exists, and I'd love to hear your take on that. But I also think people who are Christians often see Jesus more often than maybe somebody who didn't. And that's not always the case. Sometimes people who weren't religious at all do. So I'd love to hear anything you want to comment on for as long as you want. Just it's a discussion.
Well, I think what I've really learned is that we've got these little tiny human brains, and we try and take on these immense source and the universe and everlasting and all that. We can't do it. We're doing our best, to piece it together. And every time I hear a near-death experience, it kind of reminds me of a jigsaw puzzle. We all go and we get this little bit of piece of heaven or spot in heaven or floor or whatever, and we bring that back and we think that's the whole thing, but it's not. And so if we hear all these different experiences, then we get a better idea of how immense, eternal, something that we're not meant to understand now. That's cheating. I think, when people say, well, aren't you mad that when he was showing that stuff in the book that you couldn't remember it when you got back? And I thought, no, that's cheating. That's like looking at the answers. This way I have to work through it. I have to be aware, is this something I'm supposed to be doing? And I found that there's always this feeling of joy when I run into a person. Say, for a while I had this like airplane ministry. It was really weird. I was going to see my parents every month in California. I'm up in Washington, and it seemed like at least half the time I would have somebody sit next to me. And I don't usually talk to people on airplanes, that would start a conversation. I'd get a little bit because I'm trying to read my Kindle. And then they'd say, I just came back from my mom's funeral, and I'm sorry, I just don't think I'm ever going to see her again. And I go, ooh, bing, it's one of these people. And this happened, I don't know how many times. It just got to be a joke. I could, when I was sitting in the waiting room, waiting for us to board, I would pick the most obnoxious person, all right? And the whole place, the one that wants their seat changed, and why can't they bring their dog and all this stuff. And I go, oh,
That's who I'm sitting next
right
to.
next to that person.
I have that too.
And sure enough, every time they would, and they'd start up a conversation that seemed innocuous, and then we'd end up crying, and I had two different ladies that walked me down to baggage claim so I could meet their husbands. They said, oh, I sit next to this wonderful lady. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't seen her today. And that's my clue, that I'm on the right track. So it's fun. It's turned into fun. I thought it was going to be a drag, but it's really good fun.
Yeah, that makes so much sense that you're put in the path of people who need to hear the message that you have. When you came back, did you find that you had any kind of enhanced psychic or medium mystic abilities, or was it just the knowledge of there's more out there now, and now I can share that?
I'm not that spiritually inclined. I'm more down to earth. So for me, it was funny. Just to be kind of reminding me all the time when I would drive at night and come to a stoplight or a stop sign, the overhead light, the street light, would go out every single time. So I had this energy in me that I've heard that blows things out. And for a while, I was concerned about that. But after a while, it got to be kind of funny. And like so far, knock on wood, we haven't had any problems tonight. I can't tell you how many times I get on a podcast and her microphone goes out and we get hung up on. This happens. The first one I was ever on was with Kirsty Salisbury, and she's in New Zealand, and she's darling. And we got to going, and we had, everything was screwed up. And I've never had this happen. I've never had this happen. And then all of a sudden it went black. Well, she got back to me the next day and said the entire block went out. Now, I don't say that's all my fault, but it was accident. She says, that's never happened before. So there's an energy thing. I have this sense when I'm around people that are troubled. I can feel that, and I get kind of a, I don't want it's not spooky or anything, but I'm thinking, oh, this person's going to need to talk. And generally, even with people that I know, I'll say, "How you doing?" They'll say, "Fine," and I think something's wrong with their son. I say, "Are you sure you're fine?" "Oh, well, my son's got this thing." So I know to pursue that. I mean, I'm not invasive or anything, but yeah, it is kind of a gentle sense.
Yeah, and I think it's really a matter of semantics. When I say psychic, it's really just your intuition has been
Hmm.
enhanced, because you're
Hmm.
more in tune with the sixth sense. The you're more in tune with the world, if you will, the dimension in which we are able to pick up on those things. And
Hmm.
I also find it so fascinating that your father also had, I don't know exactly what kind of experience, but oh, I just felt spirit come right in. I wonder if that's him.
It
Um,
might be him. Yeah,
I
he's
just got
wrote. I'm looking at his picture up here. He wrote the first chapter of my book.
that checks out because as I started to speak about him, he some very strong presence. Does he have a very strong personality, or is it
Yeah,
just
he's a lot of fun.
he's got a real like high kind of
Yeah.
energy coming in, like it's funny because when you describe him, he sounds so pious and polite, but he comes through with this big personality, which is so
Oh yeah.
interesting. And I think
Yeah.
it's he just gave me so many chills. What's his name?
Yeah.
It does not yeah, tell
That's
me.
Bill.
Bill, okay.
Bill.
I just heard
Yeah,
like
he was
I
a
just
captain in the Navy. He was a career Navy person, and he was very
beautiful
a
smile. Does he have a beautiful smile?
big, beautiful smile.
He just smiled
Yeah.
at me to show me like how he's really nice teeth.
Yes.
Like he's just so handsome, like and very
Yes.
charismatic. I love him. And I just heard the name Frederick, and I didn't know if that meant anything to you, like Fred. But we can sometimes names aren't correct, but he just came in with this warmth of spirit and heart, and like he wants to join in the conversation. So
Oh
I'm
yeah.
letting him. So I'm allowing that to happen because I'm getting full body chills. He's so cute. And okay, Bill. I'm
Yeah,
like,
Bill.
Bill, I'm trying to talk here. But if he has anything, I'll keep it coming. But yeah, I find it so interesting that he had this experience and then you had this experience. Is that what is that? Is it a coincidence? Is it
No,
destiny?
I
Is
think
it
we were probably, on many lifetimes together.
yeah.
We were really close. We still are. I mean, I
Yeah.
still, he's always with me. I invited him to come tonight. So,
Yeah, now he's with me too. And I felt like
yeah,
I
yeah,
immediately just
everybody loves him. Everybody
oh,
loves
I
him. They
do.
miss him so much. He died about a year and a half ago of
Oh,
COVID.
so
He was
recent.
97.
What a long life he had.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That is
Yeah.
so
He's
interesting.
wonderful man. Wonderful man.
Yeah, I can feel that. He's great. He's very funny. So, yeah, so what I wonder too is since this has happened to you, since this happened to you, have you lived your life any differently? Or what is different about your life or the way that you experience it?
I think one of the best things that's happened to me is I don't feel like a victim anymore.
Ah,
There was so many times I had my first child died when she was 2 days old, and I was so angry with God for doing that. Well, how can you kill my baby? How can
yeah.
I just felt blackmailed into staying in my religion, or else he wouldn't let me see her again. I mean, I was a mess. And now I understand that I've chosen everything that happened in my life. It's obvious to me that the person that the spirit that played my child, I said, look, Kath, I'll come down for 9 months and 2 days. That's it. I'm going home. But I know you need to learn some lessons, and I wanted to learn about empathy. And so I learned a lot about empathy from having that experience. So no matter what happens, I more or less say, okay, what's the lesson?
Mhm.
Instead of,
I think so too.
I'm not a victim. I think that's very freeing.
I agree with you. I've now really sunk into that reality of whatever happens, oh, I just keep feeling such good energy. I feel like you have really like not just him, but I feel like you have such a beautiful spirit team around you. I just there's so many of them. I feel so cozy and warm and just goosebumps everywhere.
Good, good.
Yeah, oh gosh. Wow, I love this feeling. It's like it's incredible. Thank you. So thank you for bringing your beautiful energy and also your loved ones in spirit. Yeah, I really love that because now that I'm in that flow, I see things the same way. And I had this conversation the other day with a friend of mine where she said, "Look, I, Mike, as your friend, like she'll say things like, I just want you to think about this choice because I just want to make sure that you aren't hurt or that you're not disappointed." And I said, you know what, at this point, I can handle it. Like I'm not afraid of feelings. I'm not afraid of disappointment. I'm not afraid of fear. I I'm not excited to feel it, but I also know that it's teaching me something and that it's helping me grow. So I welcome it. I said, I'd rather have the adventure of not knowing what's coming next. Whereas before, I talk about this on the podcast a lot, and I'm a recovering sex and love addict. It's been 15 years of recovery, so I feel very, very healed. But obviously, we're human. But in the past, when I would be let down, disappointed, hurt, or I would let myself down, I just would spiral to the depths where I didn't want to be alive anymore. I had no coping skills. I had nothing to come back to. I didn't have a spiritual center to, and I don't even mean like religion, or I just mean that I didn't trust that there was a higher power. I didn't trust that I was lovable. I didn't like myself. I didn't love myself. I didn't have a career I was proud of. Nothing in my life except my family felt good and safe. And so now, though, having gone through that whole recovery process, I just am in such a different place where now I say, look, barring obviously huge red flags, if you go down this road, you're going to get deeply hurt. That's a different story. But I said, no, there's certain things I need to play out. I feel my soul is calling me to play it out. I feel my soul wants to know what's next. And if it makes me sad, then it makes me sad. I will survive it. It will only bring me more wisdom. So I love that. It is so freeing. And of course it's nothing, obviously losing a child is just unimaginable, but it is so beautiful that at least if you have to go through that grief, you can now see it as I know people don't like to hear my soul chose this, but that your soul chose this. And can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know some people get really upset. What do you mean? Why would I choose this? Why would I choose to carry a child to term, which is the biggest investment you can make, and to have that happen, why would you choose that?
I think it took me a while, but after my best friend lost her baby like 2 years later, and then another friend lost hers, they both said to me, people say, oh, I'm sorry you lost your child. You'll have another. That's not what you want to hear. Or you'll get over it. And she said, when you say, I know how you feel, she says, I know you know how I feel. And I see that you've survived it. And if you can survive it, I can survive it. So there is a comfort, to be around people who have gone through what you have. And that empathy is so much more important than sympathy. Sympathy is pretty useless, actually. But empathy, that's something that you can really use to help inspire people. So that whole thing that snowballed into a lot of things that I got involved with. And hell, of course, I took that experience and it threw me into an abortion clinic to work in hell. And
Mm,
so that was just totally opposite of where it was my idea of heaven, that's for sure.
yeah.
But yeah, all these things, they you have to be aware, you have to say, okay. And like hospice, when I got back, I just had to go work at hospice. And somebody says, why would you want to be around people who are dying? I says, because I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous of them.
Living
That's why I want to
vicariously.
be around almost dead people. They're my favorite. So I did the hospice for a couple of years, and I found myself to be very helpful there. This one poor little old guy was there by himself, and he was dying and he was scared. I just, at one point I just said, I am just so envious of you. And he couldn't talk. His eyes got all big, like, what? And I says, I have been where you're going. And it's so wonderful. Your friends are going to be there, your family, your pets. I says, oh man, you are just going to love it. I am really jealous. And he just got Oh, he just settled right down. He just got ready. He was getting, he was looking forward to it. So those kinds of things, are the blessings of that. You think it's a trauma
Mhm.
at the time, but if you just be patient, the blessing will come through.
Oh, yeah, that's such a good way to look at it because most near death experiencers that I speak with say, I wouldn't wish it on anybody because it can really be, well, first of all, the trauma that takes you there can be obviously horrific, scary, frightening. And then but interestingly, it's the coming back that can be very traumatic for people. What was your experience of that?
Oh, I was furious. I was so mad that he threw me out, and then to wake up in that situation of being totally dependent. I could move one finger and blink. I overheard the doctor say, we don't know how brain damaged she is. She'll never work again. She might be able to drive a car, but she's going to have to go live with somebody. I was 52 years old. I had my own business. I was very independent. I'd raised two kids of my own. And here I'm laying in this bed and this, you've got too much left to do rattling around in my, I mean, I was pissed. There's no other word for it. And it was a good thing that I couldn't talk because my mother comes over. I mean, they were like looming at me. Oh, the poor things. They were there for 3 weeks, day and night, terrified. And my mother said, oh, we had a prayer circle going around the world to bring you back. And I was not happy with that. That was not a good thing. And a little later, a couple of months later, I was still grousing about, wishing I was still dead, I didn't
Yeah.
have it. And I says, Mom, if this ever happens to me again, if I'm ever that sick, you pull the plug. You don't bring me back. She says, honey, don't worry, we won't. Such an ingrate, but people don't understand, they just don't understand. And anytime I tried to talk about the dark part, oh no, 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 we don't want to hear about that. Oh my gosh. No, no, Kathy, now just stop. Don't talk about that. That's terrible. What did you do? What did you do to go to hell?
Right.
So nobody would listen. So that you got all this. That's a lot of trauma. I finally went to my shrink, and she had heard the whole story, and she made notes, and then she just says, I'm sorry, Miss McDaniel, I'm going to have to put PTSD on your chart. And I says, okay, and she says, I don't know how to help you. And I thought, swell. So again, synchronicities after synchronicities. 10 years later, I find myself in this room in Seattle with Evan Alexander. You haven't
Yes.
mentioned him. And what does happen too is the voice. I don't know if you've heard the voice. The voice is like your higher self, guardian angel, God, whatever source. Uh, I felt it my whole life. Most people do, oh, Kath, that's not a good idea. You might want to think about that twice, that kind of thing. But boy, when you got back, boom, that thing is loud. So I was arguing with this damn voice all the time. It wanted me to go up to Seattle. I didn't want to drive in the traffic. And it says, get your keys, And I said, well, I'm in the car and I'm driving. I don't want to go. Last time I went one time and everybody was talking about angels and bunnies and I don't belong there. Get in the car, take this turn off. And I said, why do I have to go? Well, you're going to have to meet somebody up there. It's very important. You have to meet somebody. So I thought, you can swear to the voice. He doesn't care. And so I parked the car. I got inside and there was this clown Alexander or somebody that would died and blah blah, and then the place was a huge room this time. Usually they're in this little cubby in a library, and I got there early because I'm always afraid I'm going to get lost. And so I thought, well, if I'm supposed to meet anybody, I'm going to make it difficult. So I went down and I sat on the aisle. I'm about 10 chairs up. There's nobody in front of me, nobody on the side of me, nobody behind me for 10 rows either way. And I sat there with my arms closed and I thought, fine, just make this person appear that I'm supposed to meet, right? And I'm just kind of looking around, I'm listening, and people are saying, oh, Dr. Alexander, wow, wow, wow. And I thought, well, he's kind of good looking. I guess it can't be all bad. So, you know, And then finally, I thought, okay. And I thought, okay, somebody's going to come. Somebody's going to have to find me. And so out of the corner of my eye, I see this woman walk by, 10 rows, 10 seats down. And she walks by and she stops and she cocks her head like she's listening to something. Hmm. She backs up. She doesn't even turn around. She backs up, stops at my row, walks all the way down 10 chairs and sits right next to me. And I thought, this is interesting. So I didn't say anything. She didn't say anything. I was looking at my little flyer they gave me, and she just she's waving at people. She knows people and saying hi to people, but right next to me. And I thought, what is up with this? So finally, Eben does his shtick, and we're about halfway through, and I am just impressed. I mean, my God, he had the brain bleed, and he's in heaven for I don't know how many years, and went to the Akashic records. I didn't know what the hell that was. Anyway, so I was thinking, wow, this is really cool. So this gal turns and says, "Are you new?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh, and I said, "I was supposed to meet you today." She says, "Well, I know." And I said, "What do you mean you know?" She says, "Well, I was walking by and the voice, do you know the voice?" I said, I do know the voice. The voice told me to go sit next to that lady. She's really nice. And I thought, oh, this is getting a little spooky. This really is a little weird. Well, she and I became really good friends. They kept bugging me to tell my story because, gee whiz, we don't get these really awful ones very often. I thought, well, you're going to bring popcorn and I tell my story. Yeah, it'll be great. It'll be really fun. That was 10 years ago. They're having me up next week and it'll be on the 10-year anniversary, practically almost to the day that I spoke the first time. So anyway, I didn't want to tell it. I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. I didn't want to tell all these people. I went to hell. And so my friend says, "I'll sit in the front row and you just tell the story to me. Don't look at any of these other people." Right. So usually they only had about, I don't know, 40, 50 people show up. Well, the word got out that somebody went to hell. So the play was standing room only, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm not a public speaker. I won't be able to do this. I'm going to crash and burn. But anyway, once I got going, I am a storyteller. And I was just looking at her. And then I could sense the energy in the room. I mean, you could have heard a pin drop on some of these parts. And at the end, they're all just good. They all felt like they were in hell with me, right? So they're all getting a little nervous. And at the very end, I get out and there was applause. I mean, they were so happy to be out too. And I thought, well, now that was kind of fun, that was positive. And and so I was very fortunate, the voice is all planned, you know, I just basically show up. This is my 80th podcast right now. This is so fun.
That's so
Yeah, in
many.
2.5 years. I mean, and I thought when they said, "You've got too much left to do, you've got all this people you've got to tell this to." And I thought, how? And then we had COVID. I couldn't even go to the library and have 4 people show up. Then Christie's called and then they just started pouring in. And yeah, I spent a lot of time working, trying to put them all together and all that stuff. But the universe takes care of it, or we planned it, or it's just shut up and show up is what I hear.
I appreciate that so much and that you do. And I want to say thank you, but I know that it's more from the spirit side saying thank you. I mean, I'm grateful, but I know that the spirit world is really grateful that you're doing this. And it's during COVID that I started this podcast because I had nothing else going on. And it seemed like a really great time to delve into a topic that I'm passionate about, even though I myself have not experienced a near death experience or an out of body experience exactly. Um, it just started to seem like I was being pulled and pulled and pulled for whatever reason. And I do believe that it was spirit nudging me to use the skills that I do have as an actor, as somebody loves to connect with other people. I went to this big party the other night where I knew nobody, not even the host. It was a blind date where I was set up with the blind date was the guy having the party, and it was this huge party, and my friend said, "You must have been so nervous walking into a whole house of." I said, "Oh, no, I love that. I love meeting new people." There's not I immediately run up and hug people. I feel like we're all family already. I don't get that. I did when I was young. When I was a child, I had severe social anxiety, and I think because of that, I just almost kind of burst through and didn't want to feel caged anymore. So for me, it felt like spirit was telling me, you have this interest, you connect well with people, you're an actor, you have a studio, you know how to do this. This is a way for the word to get out more. And I think that really does feel right to me, that that's what happened. I was having a dark night of the soul, and spirit was like, here, I'm going to give you a job to do. And it feels so important and so beautiful, the people that I've connected with through this, and the fact that all of you, every one of you, I've never had someone say, I don't want to, I've already done this, I don't want to do it again. It's all of you have this gracious attitude about sharing, because you know that it's something that will help, even if it helps one person. Even, yep. If I, even though Jeff Mara, for example, has like hundreds of thousands, I don't know, of followers, and I'm, just cracking the 1,000 mark on YouTube, and I don't know how many on the rest of the outlets, but I think it doesn't matter, because there are people here that have told me, yours is the first podcast I've seen about this. I didn't even, it came to my attention and now I'm in it. And so it's amazing. With that in mind, what do you think is the benefit of knowing, of having this knowledge? How can it help us to know this in our lives?
Oh, it's put you up on the scale, man. I mean, you don't people people say, well, do you have faith at such a no, I don't need faith anymore. I know. And it's so much better than this blind faith that most of the time is not correct anyway. I got a real a thing with about religion. I don't care what religion. I think it's very exclusive, and you got to be, it's a club, and there's man-made rules, and all of that has had to fall away. And that's that deconstruction thing that you read so much about. I kind of gotten in with that. We come back, and we're spiritual, not religious. That's the all this new terminology I'm picking up, and it feels like, I don't know, it feels like it's growing so fast, Shannon. More and more podcasts, and that's what's really, really, really helped, because none of us knew the others were out there.
Yeah.
And now, Jeff Mara, I loved him. He was
Yeah.
like my 13th podcast back when he had the long hair, and I mean, he
Yeah.
was just starting out, and he was taking a step into the unknown, and he's done really well because people need to hear this. You're
Yeah.
doing it because you chose to do it and you signed up, and I think you're doing great. You know,
Thank you.
yeah, we need everybody. There's room for everybody.
That's I've talked about that here too. So I may be repeating myself, but I thought, but what do I have to bring to the table? Because everyone else, there's Jeff Mara, there's Kirsty Salisbury, there's Passion Harvest. There are all these really wonderful podcasts about this. And I thought, but so where do I fit in? And then I just kind of felt, because you bring in your own, everyone brings their own unique spin to it, because you all have your own personality and your own energy. And there are going to be things you share on my podcast that you didn't share on Jeff's, or vice versa.
Right.
So there's always room. And I feel like that's actually something that we should remember in this earth too, with general abundance, with abundance in general, is that there's this idea that if I make for money, for example, well, then I'm taking away from somebody else. And there's this fallacy that if I get, you lose, in our culture, maybe, but also just that seems to be the human mind. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think what we learn through the knowledge of understanding who we are is that the God, the universe, whatever you want to call that source we all come from, wants us all to thrive. I mean, because it's part of, you are me, I am you, God is me, I'm God. I mean, we are all part of God. So the source energy that is God, of course, wants us all to be in our best selves and to thrive.
Right. I feel abundant, is a good word. There's just enough for everybody. And there'll be lots left over. It's a human thing. I think I don't know. It's me, and that's just what we're dealing with being a human being. I love the idea. Somebody said once that in one of their trips on the other side, that they were told that picking to going to Earth is the toughest gig. That's the hardest place to go. That's for the brave souls because it's tough down here and we don't realize what's going on most of the time. We're just the blind leading the blind. And now we're getting a little light, thank God. But I like that idea. And it was almost like when you're in spirit again, you have a little thing that says, I did Earth, and people go, oh man, tell me about that. I'd never go there. So I think lighten up is a big thing for me. Stop taking things so seriously. It's all under control. God is loving and we're here to learn things. It's all good. That's what a friend of mine says all the time. It's all good. It's going to work out. And we don't have to have faith. You know it. It's going to be okay. Not saying it's always easy or it's always fun, but it's just this big. Eternity is so huge. And even 100 years on this planet goes by in the wink of an eye. And yeah, lighten up, enjoy the ride.
Usually my last question is, what do you want people to know? But I feel like you answered that question intuitively. And I kind of, I kind of just want to leave it there because I feel like everything you said was so succinctly perfect. And I do want to ask if you want to share anything. I know that we have your book and I'll put a link to it below. Do you have a website or do we find it on Amazon? Where can we find you? And what do you have going on in your life? What's coming up for you around this or anything else you'd like to share?
Well, just got back from the IONS conference and that was fantastic. And then I decided to go on a trip by myself. Every now and then I just do this. Well, I'm with a tour, but
Yeah.
did go to by myself to Alaska for my 70th birthday. That was fun. But now I'm going to see 3 of the national parks in a
On a
couple of
tour?
days. Just go on a tour, and I'm just going to go and enjoy that. I love being out in nature. Now, one thing I do want to say, what I usually like to close on is
Yeah.
that uh, quite a while after I'd been back, is starting to fade a little bit, and I didn't want to lose that. And I said to God, the voice, whatever, I need something to like a mantra or something to keep me centered on all of this stuff. Could you please give me just something? No, now thou shalt not. Just something positive. So over a period of weeks, it came in two little words that would go get burned in my brain. Be loving and kind, merciful and forgiving, encouraging, grateful, non-judgmental, and useful. So that's what I would like to leave with people. I put that on my bookmarks and if we just concentrate, that's my intention every morning. God help me to be these things. And loving and kind, if you can remember nothing else.
Thank you. That is so beautiful. I think that's such a great, definitely a great place to leave it and food for thought. And sometimes it seems easier said than done that just to go through the world gracefully and be as kind as we can, even when others may not be as kind, to meet everyone with as much compassion as we can. That's always my goal. And obviously, we're human. We're not perfect. We definitely find ourselves being like, that lady cut me off in traffic. And then, you have to kind of bring it back down to we're all souls. We're all part of the same. That's a reflection of me. Let's just try to ride the wave together and create peace. You are such a beautiful person, and I loved speaking with you and having your family come in. I definitely know your dad because he's just been sitting here enjoying the whole thing with us, and it really means so
Yeah,
much to me to have his visit.
super.
So,
Yeah, me too.
yeah, I wish you the best of everything. I'm so
Well,
glad that
thanks,
we met.
Shannon. You're going to do great. Just keep doing
Thank
what you're
you.
doing. Okay, you're on the
Amazing.
right path.
You are too. Thank you so much for being a light
Okay,
in this world.
thanks.
Thanks, Kathy.
Okay, bye.
Bye.